It's the NBA Hardwood Show on Run Pure Sports on Thursday, as always, brought to you by absolutely nobody. I am here once again with DC, Sweet Travis. Sweet Travis, for all of you asking, he just now is taking a look at the slate for the first time. So he is going to be well prepared to break down the plays and give you the winners on this beautiful Thursday in the United States, the freest country in the world, DC, as we remain somehow, surprisingly, for at least one more day. The NBA trade line has come and gone. I believe it is over. Is that correct? It was over as of an hour ago, something like that. So a lot of just nothing, Some interesting moves by the Hawks to get rid of a player that they used to like a lot, who's DeAndre Hunter, and bring back really absolutely nothing. Some moves by the Suns that were confusing in not getting rid of Kevin Durant after reports coming out that the locker room was toxic. And then, of course, we're still, some of us at Run Pure Sports more than others, still trying to get over the Luka for AD trade. But then the Lakers make a nice trade, getting Mark Williams there to balance that out and give them a big man down low. So the trade deadline, though, overall, DC, I'd say it was kind of a fizzle at the end outside of the Luka trade. What are your thoughts? How are you doing on this beautiful Thursday?
I am doing well. It is a beautiful day here in Denver. Got up to the mountains this morning, a little 10-mile run, shirtless in the sun, 2 dogs at my side. Just a beautiful morning. Travis, on the other hand, has not turned the heat on in his house, still dressed in winter clothes and hat. But we'll get there, Travis. The summer's coming. We'll get you in some some appropriate attire. But yeah, I mean, the trade deadline, JT, when the trade deadline kind of kicks off by like the most shocking trade in basketball history, obviously the Luka Doncic trade, it's kind of inevitable that it's going to seem a little bit like a fizzle at the end, like you said. Jimmy Butler, obviously the kind of the other big name. I personally don't think Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond are nearly enough to be a true threat in the West, but we'll find out about that kind of starting tonight. Golden State, LA play kind of the marquee game for all the trades that happen. Not that all these players are playing in the game, and then I do think for DFS purposes, because of the guys that were traded, the new players not ready to get back in. Certainly, that Lakers-Warriors game will be one that I think inevitably, no matter what else happens on the slate, going to be a popular game to target. So 6-gamer on Thursday. Obviously, all the trade deadline ramifications. Quite a few of these teams have at least minor moves that they did. Should be fun to break it down and hopefully end up on the winner's circle tonight.
Yeah, and listen, when you get to the point that you're doing that run pantless, I mean, that will be impressive. The shirtless run, okay, all right, it's nice. You get out there, you get a little.
We'll be busting out like the real short running shorts, that are like mid-thigh high. We'll get there, JT.
All right. Travis, people are commenting. Looks like you're a little bit chilly in your spot there. And what's going on with you?
Oh, I'm actually fine. It's not bad. Actually, fun fact, I actually do have the heat off. The reason why is there's a leak. So the leak is getting fixed tomorrow. But doing good today. We got the trade deadline. Excited for, all the trades that were made. The Phoenix Suns still stayed stagnant and did not do anything. So good to see Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker running it back one more time. Good luck to those losers. And, the Lakers just continue to win, right? Mark Williams, great addition. I thought that was an awesome move that they made. They just bet on themselves. They gave up a 2030 unprotected pick because they know they're going to have Luka in their prime. So, Denver didn't make a deal. I was hoping they would. Marcus Smart got buried in Washington. I was not happy about that. So, overall, it was a fun trade deadline, but I'm with DC, right? Luka getting dealt right away. It's like, how do we even top that? It just makes it kind of difficult, but overall it was fun.
Why were you not happy with the Marcus Smart trade to Washington? Are you a friend of Marcus? Are you a fan? You're upset by that?
Well, I'm a Celtics fan, so I was a big fan of him when he was with Boston, and he's one of those guys that was a casualty that didn't get a ring and should have got a ring, right? He was part of that team basically, and then got shipped out of town, and then he got sent to the Grizzlies. It's been a while since he's been with that team, and went to the Grizzlies and you thought maybe be a promising situation. Then John Morant pulls a Glock out, and then it's a disaster of a situation. And now he's in Washington. So it's just unfortunate for Marcus Smart.
All right, we'll move on. We have 6 games tonight. It's an interesting slate because every game is on the slate. It's a full slate on both sites, but there's a break. So you have the 3 games between 7 and 7:30, and then you've got a 9 and then a couple of games at 10 and 10:30. So one of those nights where you have to be paying attention throughout the night, as you always do in NBA, but they've been cutting these slates off a little bit, leaving the late games off. And that's not the case here tonight. So we'll dive in and get started right away talking about Marcus Smart's former team, the Boston Celtics. They will be hosting the Dallas Mavericks. Injury news here. Anthony Davis is not expected to make his debut tonight. Looks like they're saving him for the weekend. PJ Washington remains out for Dallas, as does Dwight Powell. Drew Holiday is questionable on the Celtics side. Travis, fully healthy team here for the Celtics. Prices are up there as well. On the Dallas side, prices up a little bit as well there too. This is an 11.5-point spread, but Boston's had trouble putting teams away early and have let teams hang around. So what are your thoughts here on Boston and Dallas?
Yeah, I was sort of kicking myself the other night when Dallas played, and like they have Kyrie, right? They had a lot of their pieces, but they didn't have PJ Washington. And I was not super excited to play Sixers, mainly because Embiid was back. He was cheaper on a site like FanDuel. I know people talked about the difference between price in our Discord chat, and that was a big conversation point of how Tyrese Maxey was a lot more expensive. And I kind of kicked myself after watching the game and being like, PJ Washington is not there. Like, this defense is not going to be good right now, right? PJ Washington is one of those pieces. When you take him off the court, especially after all the Lucas stuff, right, it's going to be a worse team where defensively you can attack them. So I'm not saying let's load up on Boston, but let's not ignore them as studs that you can spend up on that people might not get to today, right? Jason Tatum, 9.8K. He's definitely someone that I think is a spend you can make a case for. Jaylen Brown, an 8K. You can make a case. Kristaps Porzingis in a revenge game. All these guys, you can mix and match them throughout your lineups. Of course, the Drew Holiday news, that's important. If a Drew Holiday misses, that's going to be a bump for the guards, specifically probably Peyton Pritchard and Derek White at 6.3K. But I just don't want to ignore this Dallas team. I mean, the Boston team going up against this Dallas defense, because I do think there are points to be scored. Another thing that you called out, JT, and we've been talking about it for a while, Boston is like letting teams hang in games, right? And if they let Dallas hang in this game, certainly you're going to get a lot of fantasy points from these Boston guys. So again, I'm not loading up, but I'm not ignoring them. I think that's a super important point with it being the first game, because I think a lot of people will just ignore them as these stud options. So I think Tatum overall, I think he's a really good stud option as a spend up that I will look to get to. When it comes to Dallas, got to make a decision on Gafford, because Gafford at 7.1K, he feels pretty cheap. I like him a little bit in this spot. Of course, you got Max Christie. I know he had an amazing game the other day, 5.1K. I'm not buying Max Christie. I'm not going to load up on him or anything like that. So my real main decision points on this Dallas side right now are, what do I do with Kyrie as a spend, and what do I do with Gafford? And my lean right now is Gafford's probably the best Mavericks play on the slate. You could make the case if they don't start a Dante Exum, or if they start like a Najee Marshall, he could become a better play. But I don't know who they're going to start at the 3. They did start Exum the other day. That's something I'm going to want to wait on, and we'll get that 30 minutes before lock, and that's something we'll be talking about in the Discord chat, because if we get a surprise starter, I could see us getting excited about one of these value plays that pops up.
DC, this game is in Boston. Kyrie back in Boston. Kyrie feels, of all of the guards on this slate at 8,700 on DraftKings, feels like 50 at that price would be nice on this slate. What are your thoughts here, and whether or not you can pick out any of the Boston guys who might be able to have a ceiling tonight?
It's just tough with Boston when they've got everybody healthy to pick out who it's going to be. You know, Mangone saying you could make a case for Tatum. You could make a case for Brown. You could make a case for Porzingis. he didn't actually make the case for any of those guys because they're not that great of plays on the slate, right? It's hard to know which one it's going to be. And we got more value coming down the pipe. It is a decently sized slate at 6 games. So as usual, I'm going to be cautious on the first game of the night when, again, trade deadline's over, but we could still see some weird stuff, guys sitting out. It's kind of like the deadline's over, but the dust is still settling for a lot of these teams. And so we could see kind of some funky rotations tonight. Obviously, Boston, you know what you're going to get for the most part in terms of the rotation, the minutes, and the production. So, again, no problem with really any of the main Boston guys. It's just, as always, when they're healthy, difficult to pick out who it's going to be. I don't see anything in this particular matchup that has me super leaning, Porzingis over Tatum or vice versa. Usually when that's the case, I'll lean toward the kind of the true stud, which is Tatum. But again, I do sort of lean toward looking more toward the later games. Obviously, we'll get to those here momentarily. And then the other reason, Dallas, this feels like a tough spot for Dallas to me. These guys have played a lot of minutes. They've been playing shorthanded. They don't have Anthony Davis quite back yet. PJ Washington is still hurt. Again, it just feels like let's let the dust settle and, maybe regroup after this tough game going into against a fully healthy Boston team. Could see Boston kind of running away with this one. Maybe Dallas saves their guys' legs a little bit and they kind of reset when Anthony Davis is with the team, which I assume will be the next game. It's been a while now since he's been out. So I don't love this spot for really either team. Definitely the Boston side, I think, is more interesting. And for me, if you are playing Kyrie Irving, I kind of think the Kyrie-Gafford combination works for me. I think they need both of them to play well, play big minutes to keep this game close. You could easily see Kyrie Irving, getting up some lobs to Gafford. That's one mode of offense that I think could be successful for them. So I do like that pairing if you're going to Dallas. But overall, I'll be lower on this game than the field for sure.
Benair is here. He's talking about Top Shots. And funny enough, Benair, we were talking about Top Shots before we came on. I don't want to give away the surprise, though. So we will let that lie for later, DC, and stick with you for the next game. It is the Rockets going into Minnesota to play the Timberwolves. Back-to-back for Minnesota. They're favored by 1. A 214 total. Steven Adams is doubtful. Tari Eason will play in this game. And Cody Zeller, of course, is not yet with the Rockets. Yaz Reed has been playing really well since he started. Played a lot of minutes last night, though. What are you doing here with the Wolves and the Rockets?
Yeah, Naz Reid clearly flashing the upside. He had that kind of disappointing game against the Wizards. Everybody was on him. I think he got hurt in that game. But the last 2 games, 40 and 36 minutes and, averaging 50 fantasy points per game over the last 2 for Reed. Clearly the Wolves they're trying to win games, right? It's been a disappointing start to the year for the Timberwolves. They're right in the middle of that playoff hunt. So this is a team, the Wolves, that I think you can rely on the minutes for a lot of these players. So maybe not the best matchup in the world for Naz Reid here. I do expect I think Amon Thompson could be on him for portions of this game, although could be preoccupied, of course, with Anthony Edwards. But I do like Naz Reid there at 6,300. I think you can go to Gobert, who's been really, really gobbling up the rebounds since Randall got hurt. 15, 13, 16 rebounds for Gobert. They took care of business last night. So you see like 31 minutes, 36 minutes for Naz Reid. It actually would have been more if that game had stayed competitive throughout. So I do think, even on the second half of a back-to-back, it's their 4th home game in a row. They didn't play max minutes last night. I think the Wolves play well here. I like them to win this game. It's actually a really, really close spread. But, I like Reed and Gobert, the 2 big men. Edwards has had way more ceiling games over the last couple of weeks than he had pretty much the rest of the year combined. So he's certainly in play as a spend-up. And then, even a guy like Jaden McDaniels, we've seen his price rise from, $5K up into the mid-6s. It's a lot, but he's had some big games as well, playing, 36 to 40 minutes a night. I don't see that changing. So I do like the Wolves side a little bit better. Rockets side, I'm in Thompson without Fred VanVleet. I think he's going to continue to have big games. Obviously, the scoring comes and goes, and potentially a tough matchup for him as well. You can see Jaden McDaniels on Thompson. I think he would do a pretty good job at limiting his production. So it's mostly the Wolves side that I'm looking at. I do think the Wolves play well here, and yeah, I'll be looking to get, especially the big men, Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, into some of my lineups. You muted JT.
That's a great point.
Travis, Minnesota and Houston. Derek Ringering is asking about Reed Shepherd playing 28 minutes last game. No, I don't think that continues. That was a back-to-back where the starters had played big minutes the night before in New York against the Knicks. So he's not someone who's on my radar, Travis, but who's on your radar for these Rockets and Wolves?
Yeah, I'm sort of with DC. I think you have to like Minnesota. If you look specifically at this team right now, like the current construction with the injuries, and you look at the minutes they played, if you look at the Bulls game, you're not going to have a proper enough data, right? Just because of who they played. Like Nickeil Alexander-Walker played the entire fourth, Jaden Clark played the entire fourth. Like this team was just kind of a mess in that game. If you look at the Kings game specifically, that's the key one we want to look at. And why do we want to look at it? Well, look at the minutes that were played with Naz Reid, 40 minutes, Ian Edwards, 37, Gobert, 40, Jaden McDaniels, 35. Conley only played 26 because then Nickeil and Dillingham, then they split up the minutes. And when you look at the other guys off the bench who are not guards, right, which Nickeil, yeah, sure, he could be a guard, he could be a forward. But point being is the rest of their guys are Luka Garza, Jalen Clark, and Joe Ingles, and Joe Ingles ain't playing. Like, the point is, these minutes for anyone not named Mike Conley in the starting lineup are very secure right now if it's a competitive game. Of course, if it's not a competitive game one way or the other, yeah, you can make the case these guys don't get as many minutes, and if it's a blowout in the way of the Timberwolves, maybe Ant gets there because he had such a big game. But I think these minutes are really good, and if you look around the industry, I am sure most of these sites have the minutes wrong when they should probably be 38 to 40. You want to load up on Naz Reid, I think, and Rudy Gobert. I like Rudy a little bit more because of some of the pricing that you'll see. I think he's pretty good on FanDuel. DK, I think it's Naz Reid is the way cheaper one, so I'd go Naz. Ant is one of the better studs, I think, to spend up on right now. I don't think he's priced up for the situation. I think he should be like 10.5K, like in the Cade Cunningham type range. I mean, he has so much usage being funneled to him. And also, it's the second night of a back-to-back, right? Mike Conley played 26 minutes the game before. He's not magically going to play 35 minutes tonight, which just could be more usage funneled towards Anthony Edwards. So overall, I think it's a really good spot for these Timberwolves because of just the minutes they play. Specifically, Ant, Gobert, and Naz Reid. Jaden McDaniels as well, I'll put in that bucket. When you try to think of the bench guys, it's either Nickeil or Dillingham. Price-wise, I think it's Dillingham at 3.6K if you are struggling for values. And then Houston side of the ball, it's a bit of a struggle, mainly because Tari Eason's back. And you have some of these prices that are up. Amen Thompson's at 8.4. Jalen Green, 7.3. Şengün, he's at 8.8. With Eason back, I just don't think there's priority plays on this Houston Rockets team. I think, yes, could you make the case like Jalen Green, I think at 7.3 feels underpriced. You can make the case that at 5.2, Tari Eason feels a little underpriced, and they might need his size more against this Timberwolves team. But it's clear that you want to buy on the Minnesota Timberwolves today, way more than the Houston Rockets.
Real quick, the Wolves have like a very clear kind of big four right now. Edwards, Naz Reid, Gobert, and then Jaden McDaniels. Those guys, like Mangone said, those guys' minutes are about as secure as you're going to get. And I know the prices kind of look high for McDaniels and Reid, but these are good players who are going to play like 38 minutes. So I think
I don't know if they're going to play 38 minutes tonight after the minutes they played last night. That's the biggest concern
they
here.
Will if it's close, JT. Yeah. If it's close, if it's not close, they won't.
No, they never. One of those guys may, but they're not all playing 38 minutes tonight. So
are you telling me Terrence Shannon Jr., Josh Minna, and Leonard Miller are going to magically get minutes?
No, I'm going to say what I'm saying is, because someone's asking a question about Dillingham, while I'm not all that interested in the backups because of that reason, I'm just not going to load up on these guys and let them all in my lineups at a high exposure rate because I do think they're going to lose a couple of minutes. Are they going to play in crunch time? Yes. Can one of the two of these guys have ceilings? Yes. Do I think the chances that they bust or have floor games is much higher on a back-to-back when they just played a game that was close right up until the end? Yes. What does that mean for Houston? I think you could see Houston play this game very tight until the end too. And I think you have to look at Houston's, especially if Minnesota is going to be more popular. I think you look a little more and say, all right, which of these Houston guys am I interested in? We didn't see it from Nikola Vucevic last night. He's not that type of player. I think you could see Sengun have a big game here and compete for those rebounds against Gobert and Reed and McDaniels. That's my point.
I do want to call out one thing in the chat by Derek. He asked, Reed Shepard played 28 minutes last game. Do you think that continues? Probably not. And I know Tari Eason doesn't play the same position, but they were just a lot more shorthanded. And keep in mind, they were playing who? They were playing the Brooklyn Nets, right? Like, it made sense. He was rolling. He kind of got hot. Like, just seems like there's not going to be as much opportunity for a guy like him. So don't chase those points.
We answered that question, Travis. Try listening. Try listening. Thank you.
I couldn't because you were on mute when you said it, I'm sure.
No. Derek heard the answer. Other people heard the answer. In fact, he thanked us. So, I mean, I'm just saying. You maybe try listening. All right. We'll move on to the next game as we work on Sweet Travis's reading comprehension. And it's a perfect time to do so because, as Chad has pointed out, he can't leave the house right now. Orlando.
Derek is very appreciative, JT, so screw you.
He got an answer. All sorts of different reasons for why. Not the fact that it was a back-to-back and guys had played 40 minutes the night before. Oh, where have we heard that before? All right. Orlando at Denver. Denver on a back-to-back here, as is Orlando. Denver favored by 6.5. 218.5 total. Denver one going away last night. This game stopped being competitive really at the end of the third quarter. But there is some big news here, guys, in that Aaron Gordon is questionable. Again, he's returning from injury. And so you could see him sit. Jamal Murray is questionable here as well on a back-to-back. Russell Westbrook remains out. On the Orlando side, Jalen Suggs is doubtful. Gary Harris and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope are questionable. Travis, what are your thoughts here? Denver favored by only 6.5 in this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one just because, so this game starts an hour and a half before the first game, which is important to note because we probably don't have the Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon news in time. And so what we have to think about is how do we want to attack the Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon news? Because if both of those guys miss, the starting five gets really interesting. It's likely Jokic, right? You assume he starts the 5. Then I'd say the 4 is going to be probably Zeke Nnaji, Michael Porter Jr. at the 3. They'll probably put Braun at the 2. And then who do they put at the 1? I mean, my lean is Julian Strawther if I had to pick. I don't think they're going to spot start like a Pickett or a Trey Alexander. I know he was the G League Rookie of the Week a week or two ago. So I don't think he's someone that's just getting called up and doing that. But I believe it would be Strawther, right? And Strawther would be a really strong value then at 3.9K. Also, keep in mind, let's say only one of those guys plays between Gordon and Murray. Just one's in, one's out. Strawther's getting minutes. And honestly, if both are out, Strawther's still getting minutes, right? Like he's going to get 20-ish minutes tonight in the lower 20s no matter what. So I think you want to make sure you're getting exposure to him and have the ability to get them. Also, Michael Porter Jr. is playing incredible right now. Like absolutely amazing. And I think this is the leap that the Nuggets have been waiting for him to take. It feels like that's the reason they didn't make any deals around the deadline because they didn't need to, because they feel like MPJ is finally taking that next step that they need. So I like MPJ. I like Braun. Those are two guys that I really want to get exposure to for sure. Jokic, of course, he's going to be a great spend. Keep in mind, this is not the easiest matchup, right? When you think of matchups like Orlando, it's not a team we typically want to target with fantasy points, but they're just so shorthanded likely in this spot that I have to consider it. And honestly, let's say Jamal and Aaron Gordon play. I still think all those guys are good plays already. So the good plays will just get better. So And we have the ability to swap. Keep in mind, there's 3 games that start at 10 p.m. or later. The Orlando side of the ball, obviously not looking at their big man. I think it's a tough spot to play Paolo Banchero. I don't think it's a great spot for him. Franz Wagner, 8.5. There's just better uses of my salary on this slate. If a Jalen Suggs missed, he's looking to be doubtful. You could make the case that an Anthony Black could pop up a little bit as a value play, but that's really all I'm looking at on the Orlando side. I really want to sit here and I want to focus on this Nuggets side of the ball, and we need that starting lineup. We did just get some pretty big news. Drew Holiday ruled out, so that is going to up some of our Celtics' interests.
DC, thoughts on the Magic at the Nuggets with Murray and Aaron Gordon questionable?
So Gordon missed 9 games with the calf injury. He sat out. He played yesterday. He played 31 minutes yesterday, but he sat out on Monday. Wasn't even a back-to-back. Just sat out for the calf injury management. Now this is, just 1 game removed from sitting out a game, and it's the back-to-back. He played 31 minutes last night. So to me, that kind of I lean Aaron Gordon sitting this game out. I think if you just look at the recent usage of him, that makes the most sense. And maybe Murray too, right? Murray, a guy who has had like a super, super talented, productive player when he's healthy, but a player who's had a lot of pretty serious injuries and a guy that they do want to get rest. Played 36 minutes yesterday, played 35 on Monday. This is the 3rd game in 4 nights, played pretty big minutes in each of the last 2 games. Would make sense to sit Murray too. I think I'm less confident in that one, but I do think Gordon probably sits. I think there's, 50-50 Murray sits. And so maybe a decent chance that they both do. I would be surprised, frankly, if they both played. So I do think Denver is going to be pretty shorthanded here. Obviously already missing Westbrook, missing Peyton Watson. And it all brings you to Jokic, right? Because, man, what he's doing just night in and night out, I think especially when he's at home, he becomes even more bust-proof. And then obviously if Murray and Gordon are missing, it's going to be all Joker. I know Orlando's got a strong defense. I'm not really worried about that for Jokic here at home. I think he's going to get whatever he wants like he always does against every team. So I do think he's an awesome spend. I don't think, like Mangone said, if Murray sits, I don't think they could start Strother. I don't even think that's really an option because they're going to need someone to bring the ball up the court. You're not going to have – obviously Joker's going to facilitate and play that role in the half court, but like Christian Braun, Strother, Porter, none of these guys can safely bring the ball up the court, which you're going to have to do against Orlando, right? If you throw it into Julian Strother on every inbound and say, bring the ball. No, Orlando's not going to let you do that. They're going to hound you in the backcourt. So I think they have to start a real point guard. And I agree with Benair. I think it's going to be Pickett. I think Pickett is extremely likely to start in this game if Jamal Murray misses. Mangone nailed it. Pickett coming off some big performances in the G League. Yes, it is the G League, but he was putting up some huge numbers, averaging like 20, 22, 8, and 8 in the G League this season. So I think if Murray misses, I think he starts, and I think they let him play a little bit. So Jalen Pickett, if we don't have news at lock, he's going in my lineups, and I'll figure it out and pivot around afterward if I have to. But I do think he could end up being the play of the slate and maybe a little bit lower owned because we don't have any news on him, right? And he hasn't had big games yet. We don't know if Jamal Murray is going to play or not. So definitely a guy I'm keeping a very close eye on as this slate progresses.
JSU says Jalen Pickett is good at basketball. Squeak Diesel says Pritchard time. Certainly if the game plays out, DC, in Boston the way that you have said you think it's going to play out, well, then you've got Jrue Holiday out, which naturally is going to give Pritchard a couple of extra minutes. If it's a walkover here, and maybe he gets a couple extra minutes, we've seen what Pritchard does in those matchups where the Celtics win big. So can't hate on Peyton Pritchard either on this slate, given the news that we have. We'll move on to the next game. And guys, we've got quite a while. We got 2 hours plus to lock. So drop any questions you have IPT, accept your request for a Top Shot giveaway. We will put you in timeout. We will put you in timeout for that. All right. DC, Golden State on a back-to-back heading into Los Angeles to play the Lakers. Jimmy Butler is not going to be in Golden State just yet. For the Warriors, Draymond Green and Trace Jackson Davis are probable. Jackson Davis ruled out at the last minute last night. Kevon Looney is playing as of right now, according to Steve Kerr. Moses Moody and Guy Santos are questionable. On the Lakers side, Luka is not going to make his debut tonight. Mark Williams is not there yet either. LeBron James and Gabe Vincent are probable. Lakers favored by 6.5, 222.5 total DC. And it looks like early ownership projections suggest the field is going to be very interested in these Warriors on a back-to-back. And I think the only one that I kind of agree with, I certainly don't agree with it to the tune of 85%, is Podziemski. I definitely don't agree with Looney Chalk. Healed, I guess, is okay, but he does have to hit his shots. I always get nervous about that. So I think I want to be under the field if he's going to be 50% owned. And then the field likes LeBron, too, at 10-8. I guess maybe if you're playing LeBron, you're gonna skip on this Nuggets news. What are your thoughts on the Warriors and the Lakers?
Yeah, tough one with the Golden State news and the trades. I mean, the Golden State's have they been the hardest team to predict minutes for this year? One of them, right? They're right up there with any other team. And yeah, maybe it'll normalize a little bit once they get Jimmy in there, but
we'll get to the Pacers. They're on this slate too, so we got a couple of exciting teams here.
There's a few candidates for that crown, if you want to call it that. But Golden State's certainly up there. I'm kind of hoping as many of these guys play as possible so that Golden State chalk, which I do think it will be chalk, some of it ends up busting, right? Because I do think I'll probably be lower on the Warriors than the field is for the most part. I do agree with you, JT, that Podziemski seems like the best play among them. Played 40 minutes last night, but I'm a little
not great. It's still not great, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I'm kind of thinking the people are looking at the 40 minutes Pods played last night and thinking that he's a sure thing for 40 minutes again, which I definitely do not think that. I would just wouldn't be surprised.
In fact, it could be Podziemski.
Or as wingmate Buddy Hield. I could see being the Levert tonight. Again,
it depends what happens to Moody and Santos. I think already with Jackson Davis being ruled in, you could just say, all right, I don't think there's enough minutes there for Kevon Looney after what he played last night to really remember. This is a guy who'll start and play 6 minutes.
The Warriors have 4 guys that can play center on the assuming Green and Jackson Davis play. I mean, Draymond, Jackson Davis, Looney, and Post. That's too many potential centers for a Steve Kerr team for me to play into chalk here. So I'm off those guys. But it is the wings and then the backcourt that I think are interesting. I mean, even Steph Curry himself down at 8,200. Again, back-to-back, played 35 minutes. That does make me nervous. But I do at least think the upside is there for him, given kind of the lack of firepower that Golden State generally has right now until they get Butler into the lineup. So I almost never play Curry. Honestly, I probably won't play him tonight, but I do think he's a fine play. And then
DC's like, you could play him. He could be a good play, but I'm not playing him. You play him.
Well, I try to be honest on the show as best I can.
You're kind of talking through it in your own mind. You're like, man, wow, Curry's 8,200.
Yeah.
But he's Curry, and this is the way the year is going.
In the end, I'm probably not clicking him in. But yeah, like you said, JT, it does matter a lot on Moody and Santos, right? Are like that's just NBA DFS for you. Freaking Moses Moody and Santos can make or break a slate, not because you want to play them, but because other plays become solid ways to go. So we'll see on that. Again, hoping to be a little bit lower on Golden State, just because we know what Steve Kerr likes to do, and the rug pull is waiting to happen. But yeah, Lakers side, I think LeBron's an awesome play. I like Hachimura and Austin Reeves a little bit too. Again, Lakers, Luka coming, but he's not there yet. And these guys are going to have to do a lot. Lakers have some good players, but falls off in a hurry. And I think LeBron, Austin Reeves, going to have to carry the load here.
Reeves at low ownership in 8,300 is one of the more interesting plays on this 6-game slate, given the fact Kegs made that Luka is not going to make his Lakers debut tonight. They will not have Mark Williams. Rui has been playing great. The only thing that prevented him from getting to nearly 50 points last 2 nights ago was a blowout. So, but Travis, thoughts here on the Lakers and the Warriors, and feel free to repeat anything that DC or I said.
I will talk about Steph Curry, and I'll say my biggest issue I think with him today is he's not like 5% owned, right? Now I do think when Steph Curry's in like the TNT games, like I do think it's a spot to consider rostering him. We're just not getting 5% ownership on him, right? Like that's when I want to play him. I don't want to play him when he's getting ownership. I see him at Saberson with 22% ownership. That just doesn't sound that appealing to me. So I don't think I'm racing to play Steph Curry. I agree with the big man take. I don't think we need to be looking at a lot of those guys. Also, if Moses Moody is in, I think he's a really big swing piece that I think he really affects the Podziemski and Buddy Hield situation more than people want to lead on. Same with the Santos stuff. So that's a really important piece of news. That's something we can definitely talk about in the Discord with those bodies. But if those guys get ruled in, well, like Buddy Hield and Podziemski become way worse plays because they could lose more minutes and they're already coming in at ownership. And I don't think that ownership goes down as much as it should. So that's a big piece of news that I can't really give you like what I'm going to do with that information because I need to know what's going to happen there. I do think Podziemski and Buddy Hield, though, if both those guys are out, yeah, they're good plays that you can take a chance on. But it's rolling the dice, and I need that news. That's the key with Steve Kerr. He even played a guy named Jackson Rowe yesterday, and he didn't just play him in blowout. He played him in the first quarter. So, yeah, that's the key with the Warriors. So I need that news. That's very important. Lakers side of the ball, I do think there is some important stuff to mention here. Like, they are missing Dalton Connect, right? Like, they're not missing guys from the last game. If you pull up the game when they played against the Clippers and look at some of the information from that, like, Austin Reeves and LeBron, for one, they're really good spends that you can get to. You can play a Jackson Hayes, obviously, if you want to at center, but center is normally pretty valuable. But no Dalton Connect. I mean, that's a pretty big piece of news. What do we do with those like 19 minutes? You know what I mean? That's JT. I'd be curious to get your take on how you're gonna like allocate like the Ruiz, the Dorian Finney-Smiths, the Vanderbilts. Like I do think there's opportunity there that people might ignore with Dalton Connect now not there.
Yeah, I think we haven't. Well, first of all, you haven't really seen the situation where they're without Anthony Davis. Dalton Connect, whatever. But I think the one thing I will say, Jared Vanderbilt is 3,200. And, 3,200 athletic guy, I think he can easily pay off that salary. So when I say pay off that salary, I mean he can get 24 to 25. He gets an extra couple of minutes. The guy I'm probably least interested in is DFS. He kind of is such a second, third, and not second, third, but second level player here. When you've got LeBron, when you've got Austin Reeves, when you got Rui taking a pretty big role here.
Yeah, he'll be better with Luka, right? Because he's basically a 3-and-D guy, fits perfectly. He'll be good.
From a pure basketball perspective, yeah. Sure. From a DFS perspective, I'm not going to be. We're probably once Luka gets there, we're not going to. It's just going to be like Dallas, in my opinion. We're not going to be interested in Finney-Smith, Rui, Vanderbilt. Like there'll be times like we're not going to be interested in Reeves, right? Unless his price gets down to the 5Ks. So it's going to be just the way that Dallas was, where you're going to play Luka, you're going to play Kyrie early in the season until they had the injuries. But for tonight, yeah, I think Rui at 5,300 is still fine. I think Vanderbilt at 3,200 is fine. We talked about Reeves being an interesting play here at just 3,200 with some of those players not there.
I just think like Gabe Vincent or Shake Milton, like I'm not sitting here trying to guess the optimal, but I just think from a value perspective, one of those guys,
interesting, yeah.
One of those guys is going to get minutes, right? Like, for instance, there's a very high possibility as this game goes on. Do we see Steve Kerr going big? I could see him going small with Draymond Green, especially if Moses Moody is in, right? Put Draymond at the 5. They could slide Moses at the 4 if they want to. And both sides could go small. And that opens up opportunities for either a Gabe Vincent or a Shake Milton. Likely Gabe Vincent, but I'm just saying the Dalton Connect thing, I don't think we want to completely ignore it. And maybe this is more of a night slate play, like some of these values, but I know there's something here and there's some opportunity here that could be picked up by one of these players. It feels like it's probably Gabe Vincent in a small ball type scenario that just won't have any ownership.
And the question is whether or not it's going to be something that you really want to take a chance on or gamble on. If we now have the Boston news, we're waiting on the Denver news. If you get Pickett starting, there's probably no need to go very heavy on any type of theory of what JJ Redick and the Lakers.
What if we don't, JT? Counterpoint. What if Jamal Murray plays? Like I'm with DC. I'm more sold Gordon's playing or not playing, but I'm not sold Jamal Murray's just magically sitting for certain in this game.
Yeah, and with the Nuggets, this hasn't been a situation where it always means when they're midday downgrade, they don't play. Many times with the Nuggets, they'll suit up. So we'll have to see what happens there, Travis. We'll move on to the next game, which is in the 10 o'clock Eastern window. And that is the Sacramento Kings on a back-to-back. Heading into Portland, all of a sudden Portland is good. Portland is dominating. They're blowing out decent basketball teams. Sacramento was favored here. They are favored here. Portland favored now by 1.5. The news here, Donovan Clingan is going to play. Matisse Thybulle remains out for Portland. And Jonas Valanciunas, Travis, he is available to make his Sacramento Kings debut. Do you see Jonas Valanciunas taking on the same role, playing those beautiful 16 to 20 minutes and getting people excited about absolutely nothing? Or do you think he's going to actually play a real role here for the Kings?
Yeah, that is something I'm not going to be loading up on. No Jonas Valanciunas for me. I do want to call out the Kings the other night. So they got blown out, right? Blown out by the Magic. They sat their guys, right? Sabonis, 31 minutes, 30 minutes for Levine, 33 for DeRozan, 30 for Keegan Murray, and only 24 for Malik Monk. I am not worried at all about these guys on the second night of it back-to-back, right? I think that's a very important note to mention on this slate. It's good to mention, too, Portland's playing great basketball. So much that we got people like Keg saying they're a playoff team. I'm not going that far. That's egregious, but they're playing good basketball right now. Just like we said with the Celtics, when they were playing bad basketball, they were a team that kind of attack a little bit. I do think Portland's playing a lot better basketball. The issue I have is if you look at their rotation, they do have a bunch of guys right now that they're kind of giving minutes to. And that's kind of the tough situation with this team. Like when they are missing like a Jeremy Grant, right? That opens up some opportunity for someone to get a little bit more minutes. Right now, I think it's a little too crowded for some of the price tags. So, I mean, Deni Avdija, I'll argue 6.6K. I think he's a pretty good play. So I do like him in this spot. You could make the case against the bonus defense that DeAndre Ayton makes sense, mainly because if a Valanciunas does play, JT, they need size, right? So an Ayton and a Deni are two guys that I've talked about and liked throughout this season. The rest of them, I don't want to play guard roulette on the Portland Trailblazers. On the Sacramento Kings, though, like I said, I am someone that thinks we have some opportunity here. Their minutes are safe. The question is, what do we think with Zach LaVine in there now? Because Zach LaVine, he's a ball stopper. I'm sorry, he just is. He's not a good basketball player, in my opinion. He's an empty bucket. I actually think it's going to hurt the Malik Monk situation a little bit. I'm kind of worried about that. I'd be curious to get DC's take on that because I know he's talked up Monk a ton, but I'm worried playing with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, it's going to hurt Monk more than it should. I do think DeRozan at 6'7", he has upside at the price, but I don't know. I'm not super excited about loading up on these guys. I do think Sabonis at 9'6", because again, both sides could match up against each other and play super big. If you have the money to spend up for Sabonis at 9'6", great. But I don't think I want to get there because, hey, I like LeBron a little bit more. I like Jokic more. I like Anthony Edwards. I talked about maybe liking Tatum. Like, I just don't know if this is going to be the spot to load up on Kings because I just think there's too many guys that the ball stops at.
DC, last night, Zach LaVine took 13 shots. Malik Monk only took 11. That's not what we're used to seeing out of Malik Monk, to Travis's point. What are your thoughts here with this new rotation for the Kings? I agree. Sabonis is maybe, I mean, we're pending the Nuggets situation. Sabonis could just totally take advantage of DeAndre Ayton. What are your thoughts on the Kings and the Blazers?
You would think so with Sabonis. He is my favorite of the Sacramento Kings as a spend up. I know they're not even close to the same price, but if spending up a center, I will personally be trying to get to Jokic for the most part. So I don't know if I'll end up with Sabonis, but he is my favorite. The Kings, I was kind of looking forward to them trading Fox and then being more playable. But you bring LaVine in there, and it's just kind of the same thing, right? It's another
the same situation as Chicago. It's like, which one of these guys is going to go off? I mean, now you're playing multi-entry. You're setting a rule. I only want one of Monk or LaVine, and obviously that means you're only going to get two of Monk, LaVine, or Sabonis. But it takes away from a guy like Keegan Murray. It takes away from DeMar DeRozan, who was playing really well. The Sacramento Kings, maybe this franchise just needs a complete overhaul because they continue to make trades that don't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. They needed a defender in LaVine's spot, not another guy who needs the ball in his hands. So it makes, I think, the Kings hard plays tonight, hard plays in general, unless they have guys out, and they don't. The value on the Kings, in my opinion, is all gone, right? When you have Monk, DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Sabonis, I mean, there's no room for role players to get it done on any sort of predictable schedule. So I think this game is honestly a relatively easy fade. I mean, Portland is the healthiest that they've been all year right now. You're seeing it in their play. They're playing well. They're winning games. But part of the reason they're winning is because they have a lot of different options they can go to on any given night, depending on who's playing well, which makes them a tough team to target for DFS. I mean, look at it even at Avdia, right? Who you kind of think is a safer play. I mean, they won by, 23 points? Avdia had 10.5 fantasy points last game against Indiana. Now, yes, an outlier game, but it paints the picture of how difficult Portland is to predict right now with the 3 or 4 guards, plus Grant, plus Avdia, plus Aiden. It's just difficult, Kamara, with this team, with Portland. So this game, I mean, it's got a high total, 230, right up there with Dallas and Boston, expected to be close. Should be a good game to watch, entertaining. But for DFS purposes, I'm not really planning to end up on much from this game, frankly.
Listen, not only that, real quick, but Valanciunas being in the second unit, the ball's gonna stop there too and soak it up as well. Like, it's just, this is not I think the Kings missed the playoffs. I don't think they're any good right now.
So I don't think Sabonis and J-Val are the same caliber of players. I don't think Sabonis' minutes are going to get cut. If they have to play J-Val 10 minutes a game, I think that's fine. But I personally think Sabonis' minutes stay about right where they were.
Yeah, so I certainly don't understand the Valanciunas trade. Maybe he's an upgrade to. Who are the guys that are Trey Lyles or something like that?
They didn't have JT. They didn't have like a center that's like Sabonis. They just want to play like that all the time. Like Alex Len wasn't cutting it for a while.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just explaining. Like, you can, like, Valanciunas is like a way shittier version than Sabonis, right? So they can just run the same exact offense with him.
Right, but that's what I mean. They had these guys that they didn't really love behind them, and they're like, okay. I mean, it doesn't make any sense because Valanciunas could be a decent offensive player. The point you made, DC, I want to just talk through this on Denny Avdia, and it fits with what we're talking about tonight. Denny Avdia, the night you reference, was a back-to-back for Portland. The night before, they played into overtime. All the starters played 40-plus minutes. Avdia, Ayton, Anthony Simons. In fact, it was Travis and I were kind of giggling about this amongst ourselves, saying, why are people playing these players? Because Ayton was like 40% owned on the main slate. And I'm like, this guy just played 45 minutes. Again, those minutes matter on back-to-backs in the NBA. You may not think so. You may think a guy is 22 years old. Those minutes matter. I have been studying this, and they absolutely matter on the back-to-back. reason why I bring that up is I think Abdi is fine. He's not in my top pool, right? He's not going to be in the group that I'm highest exposed to. But I will have a good percentage on because I think he is him and Simons, the two Blazers with serious upside in this matchup. But I bring this up because of the conversation we had about the Warriors. And you're talking about a coach that is known to be just completely unpredictable in terms of rotations. The only thing that he's predictable is what you think is going to happen in these situations does not happen. So I think Abdi is pretty safe, but I think it's fair to point out that, hey, on these, when you're looking at these Warriors who played big minutes last night, they're absolutely not sure things going back to that game. We've covered the Valanciunas situation. I agree. I think Sabonis is easily the best play. And guys, maybe the only play that I'll have in 150 from the Kings. I mean, I may allow sprinkles of the other guys just in case, because you know what's going to happen. Travis referenced it, that at some point, this Blazers magic, it's going to revert. They're going to have a down game. They're going to have a situation where they're going to give up a lot of points. Maybe that game is tonight. And the other thing that makes me interested, being Aaron's back, about this is Sacramento is favored on the road on a back-to-back. So either that's dead wrong, and it's an opportunity to go ahead and load up and bet on Portland, or this is a little bit of a regression here for Portland and maybe Sacramento picking up after, as Travis mentioned, not a very good game last night.
JT, real quick, one last thing with Portland. I know they do, if you look at some of the rotations in the Suns game, I know it was an overtime game, and the last game, they really are only playing 8 guys, right? If it's a competitive game, right? If you tell me, hey, pretty competitive game, goes down to the wire, they are kind of only playing 8 guys. The biggest issue that you're going to run into is you kind of have to guess with which guard gets hot. That's why I think the Denny and DeAndre Ayton route are the better ways to go, mainly because I don't feel like I'm guessing as much then, right? And I agree, Simons has a ton of upside, but could it be a scoot game? Could it be a shade on Sharp? And maybe that gets incorporated in ownership, and that's something to think about is what are the ownerships on these plays? But I think that's an important point to mention. I feel very safe about Ayton and Denny. And those guards, I just feel like you're just guessing a little bit. But I know they have upside in the rotation.
I think Scoot and Sharp are very expensive. They're almost the same price.
Yeah.
At Simons. So I'm going to side with Simons on this. I'm going to have a good amount of those guys. Ayton, I don't know. He's been playing well outside of, again, the last game where he was coming off a 45-minute performance. But I lean on the Sabonis side. So that's I think the top play down low. All right, last game of the night, and DC will stick with you on this. There may be some options here. There's at least one good play in this game, but it is the Indiana Pacers. Excuse me. Heading in, they play the Clippers. Clippers favored by 5, a 229 total in this game. So it's predicted to be close. Ray J. Dennis, point guard for the Pacers, is going to miss this game, as is Enrique Freeman. Quentin Jackson is doubtful. On the Clippers side, they gave away Bones Highland. They gave away Kevin Porter Jr. Not gave away, traded, whatever you want to say. Cam Christie for them is questionable. Neither Bogdanovich or Marjon Beauchamp are going to make their debuts in this game. That at least makes some of the Clippers starters maybe a little bit more interesting. Maybe James Harden is a little bit more interesting here, considering that there's not a Porter Jr., right? You still have Chris Dunn there. But Zubac is my favorite play in this spot at 7,200 on DraftKings. What are your thoughts here, DC?
Yeah, you said they traded Porter and Highland, which is true. Also traded Terrence Mann. So 3 guys shipped out, and 3 rotation players who are all playing significant amount of minutes in the backcourt. And kind of a little bit of a bizarre trade, honestly, by the Clippers. I mean, they trade essentially they're 2 backup point guards for. I mean, who'd they get back? Beauchamp, and did they get anyone else back?
Beauchamp and Bogdanovich, who is a statue shooter. That's all he is.
Yeah.
He's not a point guard. He's not a shooter. He's put him near half court. Let him shoot his 10 shots a game. If they go in, fantastic. That's all he's doing.
I'm not saying that trade, like I'm not trying to justify the trade, but I will say they're going to just Harden and Kawhi and Powell are just going to soak up the minutes. Like there's no need for a backup point guard on that team. So like I get why they ship those.
That's kind of the point that I was making is
Leonard is going to be healthy. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
They thought so little of Porter and Highland and Mann that they're just willing to trade him. I mean, especially Porter. I mean, this guy's getting consistent minutes. He did get. It wasn't so long ago they like straight up benched him, put him out of the rotation for a game. Obviously, not pleased with his play if they're trading him right now for, frankly, not that big of a return. I say all this, for tonight. I mean, I think Harden and Powell, I think, are going to play big minutes here if this game stays close. I think they're going to have huge roles in the offense. I would say the same thing about Kawhi, but I assume the minutes are still kind of hard capped at, 30? Hasn't played over 30 minutes in any game yet. Did get up to 28, 29 a few games ago. So, honestly, you probably do get 30 minutes from Kawhi Leonard here. That could be enough at 6,800. I do like him a little bit, but I do prefer Powell and James Harden, who I think are going to have they almost have to have huge roles. They almost have to play huge minutes given who the Clippers have available in this game. They get a good matchup at home against Indiana. They're favored. They likely win this game. I just think they're awesome plays. So Harden, Powell, Leonard, I do rank them in that order. And then Zubac, I think, is a good play as well. But they do at least have, backup centers Harden and Powell's backup is Patty Mills, who was playing behind the guys they just traded, who they weren't happy with. So it tells you a little bit what they think of Patty Mills as well. So I think we're going to see big minutes out of these Clippers guys.
I think they're going to play big minutes. As you're talking, I'm still remembering that the coach of this team is Ty Lue. So I think you're right. I hope you're right. But I'm not going to go crazy with those guys. I think they're good plays as well. Travis, thoughts on this game?
Yeah, somewhere Bogart is letting you know that's an NBA champion, Ty Lue, JT. But I'm just
right.
Just
and listen, congratulations. That is the only time that he will be a champion. Certainly not getting one as a head coach.
For sure. So let's talk about Norman Powell. I actually think he's the best play in this game at 6.9K. It's a really good matchup for one. The game environment's really good playing against Indiana where it's an up and down team. Also, he's going to get some of that good second unit run that you want from someone like Norman Powell. I think it's just a really nice spot for him. So Norman Powell at his price tag, 6.9K, I'm very interested in him. I like him even more than Kawhi, who's at 6.8. It's because, again, he's going to play Norman's going to play 40 minutes tonight, as long as the game stays close. Harden's fine. I think I like other spends, but listen, I'm never going to say anything wrong about James Harden. He's the system. He's the guy. If you want to add him into your pool, I don't think he's a terrible option. I don't need to get the Zubac today. I don't think it's too necessary. Pacers side of the ball, they are a bit crowded right now. If you look, they got Haliburton, Siakam, Turner, Nembhard, Mathurin. Their bench is McConnell, Aaron Nesmith, Toppin, Thomas Bryant, even Ben Shepherd. They're just deep now, and for the prices, it's kind of tough. The one thing you could argue is some of these guys that have been out, like the Nemhards and the Benny Macs, Benny Mac is only 5.1K. You could make a case that's an interesting buy low spot if the minutes are there, but the problem is they haven't been yet. So I want to be a lot lower on this Pacer side of the ball, and I want to be a lot higher on the Clippers, mainly Norman Powell. I think he is the key guy that I want to get exposure to.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the Pacers at all, DC, but I think on this slate with a fully healthy Pacers team, I think I'm setting a max one Pacer in any lineup. Maybe I'll set a 2 and see what happens. But there are certain players on the Pacers that are completely negatively correlated, and it's just not. The game environment is good. I like it. I agree with Travis, so I like it a lot more from the Clippers side. Do you have any thoughts on the Pacers, or do they kind of agree with us?
I agree with you guys. I mean, if you're playing, for people like myself playing, 3, 4, 5 lineups, Pacers are a pretty easy cross off. None of those guys I've even considered putting in a lineup so far. So obviously a little different story if you're playing mass entries, but if you're playing just a few lineups, I do feel pretty safe moving on from the Pacers pretty quickly.
Tyler Danish asks us to go back to Boston. Does Porzingis get any kind of bump with Holiday out? I don't think so with everybody else in, guys. You guys see any type of increase for him?
I think the clear biggest bump is to Pritchard, and then Derek White would be the second one. The two guys that are kind of directly competing for minutes with Drew Holiday. So I think pretty simple, but I do think both White and Pritchard become better plays, and then the rest of the Celtics, Tatum, Porzingis, Brown, small bumps, but not huge bumps for me.
No, and Drew Holiday, not really a guy who is a big usage guy in that lineup.
Low usage player for sure,
as it is. So,
yeah.
All right. I think we've covered most of the questions. Derek Ringering likes him, some Norman Powell as well. So you can go ahead and slide into Travis's DMs and do that handshake of that meme that we saw in Discord the other night. We will move on to the plays of the day, Travis. The sweet Travis play of the day.
Yeah, I'm going with the guy we just talked about. A little late night hammer, Norman Powell. He's going to get a pile of minutes. I feel like he is a really good play against the Pacers. So give me Stormin' Norman tonight.
It's interesting. I'm going to let DC go last here. And we talked about games that we're going to target. I do think this is a great spot for Sabonis. And so he's not going to be highly owned. I'm showing like 10% ownership on him. I think he can completely take advantage of the Blazers around the basket. So Domantas Sabonis is my play of the day. DC, who is the mom's basement play of the day?
I'll go to the first game of the night. No Drew Holiday. I think that gives a minutes bump to Mr. Peyton Pritchard in a matchup that I think he can win against Dallas, right? He's going to be going up against the likes of, maybe some Kyrie, but Dinwiddie, Jaden Hardy, right? These Klay Thompson, guys that he should be able to score against, that's where his big games come from. When he gets the scoring going, feels like a game, he could do that. So Peyton Pritchard, the mom's basement play of the day.
Peyton Pritchard, Norm Powell, and Domantas Sabonis. You could fit those in a lineup pretty easily. So you can go ahead and do that. We will be in the Discord. The core plays will be up sometime around 7, maybe somewhat before for some of the guys. Player pools will be up. People will be in the Discord answering questions all night long about those late swaps, which you may need to make on this slate, 2v2s and whatnot. So runpuresports.com. For DC, for Sweet Travis, I am JT. Good luck in your contest tonight.